from the rolling hills of the Bluegrass State. This is Aaron Barker, and you are listening to the Breakdown Paranormal Files. I am your guide on this foray into the unknown, the unexplored, the curious, the macabre, the creepy, and sometimes downright scary cosmos. And we'll be asking the questions that get you kicked out of Bible study and sent to therapy. Thank you all so very much for the opportunity to be with you this evening. Very excited about the show coming up. If you're listening to us over on Odyssey Radio, don't forget to download the app, and it's there where you'll be able to take all of the fantastic paranormal programs with you when you go and listen to all the podcasts and the other fantastic shows that come on over there, present company excluded. All of those folks, of course, you can listen to me on the app. I was just trying to exercise some false humility there. Fell a little bit flat, unfortunately. Anyway, so you can also check out the show by going to breakdradio.com. If you head on over to Break D Radio, you can actually click on the microphone in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can leave your sound off. That's where you can ask questions about the guest and about the topics we have, or if you have any other paranormal encounters or questions of the strange, abnormal, or macabre, please feel free to leave that there, and I will be more than happy to pass that on either to the guests or give you an answer. Now, I'll give you an answer to a question. It may not be a right answer. It may not have anything to do with your question, but I will certainly give you an answer to your question. All right, folks, so without further ado, we're going to bring on our guest tonight. Stephen Myers is with the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation, and we're going to get a little bit of information about that and his theory, their idea, based on what he says is logical research about why the pyramids and how the pyramids were created. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us on the breakdown tonight, sir.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me on the show. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the Pharaoh's Pump, the website, thepump.org, what is that foundation? What is the purpose of that group?
I represent a nonprofit foundation called the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation, and our website is at thepump.org. So the contention of our research is we're trying to understand how and why the Great Pyramid was assembled. And it's based primarily, originally, on the work of Edward Kunkel, who wrote the book Pharaoh's Pump, originally published in 1963 and had several editions. It's a kind of a thin book, but very fascinating. And he and I contend the Great Pyramid was built using water locks and barges, and that the Great Pyramid actually helped people in a tangible way by being infrastructure for the civilization that built it. It was a working machine that pumped water.
Okay, so now we're going to get to some other alternate theories here in a few minutes, but just to dig into that a little bit. So there's been a lot of mystery that's surrounded this. A lot of folks are saying that the pyramids were built as the internment of the great pharaohs and of the kings of Egypt. Was that part of that as well, or was it only built specifically as a pump to assist Egypt?
Well, I think it was a single-purpose device to pump water and to help people eat and provide prosperity for those who built it. It's certainly a big pile of rocks over in Egypt, and there's a lot of interpretations of that direct physical evidence. Egyptologists, who that science got its genesis from robbing tombs, when they encounter the Great Pyramid, it was a big tomb. But the evidence for that is certainly under scholarly debate. No mummy was found in the Great Pyramid. No funeral writings or writings of any kind, formal writings, were inside the Great Pyramid. So, no, not a tomb. Let me make a cut to the chase. So it was never a tomb, no mummy or anything. But Egyptologists, they have the tomb robbing mentality, and they still rob tombs today. They take stuff out of burial grounds and that type of thing. So it's like a hammer. To a hammer, everything is a nail, and to a Egyptologist, everything is a tomb to steal the treasure out of. And they say, well, we know it's a tomb because all the evidence for a tomb, like all the treasure, was stolen before we could steal it. So since there's no evidence, that proves it's a tomb. So no, it's not a tomb at all.
So now I do know so there's three pyramids there.
There are.
Were all three of them built as pumps, or was just one of them built as a pump?
There's three major pyramids. There is also six smaller pyramids. There's a restaurant in Egypt called Nine Pyramids that is on the Giza Plateau. I was just there a couple of months ago. I led a tour to Egypt, and it was wonderful. But there's three larger pyramids, but only the single Great Pyramid was built to be a water pump.
So now the one that you're talking about, the one that was built for that, why would they build one as a water pump and then two additional ones and then six smaller ones if they if the purpose of that first one was a pump?
Who's they?
Whoever built the pyramids, I'm assuming
Yeah,
the
we don't know.
aliens.
Yeah, there's actually no feature specific to the Great Pyramid that indicates it has any relationship to the big pyramid next to it. They could have been built 10,000 years apart from each other.
Oh, okay, okay. So they
So
weren't built right next to each other like a subdivision was.
some say within a generation of two. Other people say the some of the pyramids were built pre-flood, if you will, pre-last catastrophe. So the
Gotcha.
age of the Great Pyramid and other pyramids is under scholarly debate. So it could have been even different civilizations that built the pyramids. But again, the focus of my research is a specific pyramid, the Great Pyramid, and
Okay.
we think it's a pump. But the other pyramids could have been part of like a cargo cult, if you will. I don't know if you're familiar with that
I
concept.
am. I am. You're welcome to
Good,
explain
yeah.
it to the audience if you.
So one pharaoh could have said, "Well, this pyramid that already pre-existed our civilization, I'm going to take credit for it and assign it its glory to me." So the next pharaoh is going to say, "Well, I want one of them too," and then they make a pyramid that's certainly much simpler and of less quality, but it has some prestige to it. So that type of thing.
Okay.
Uh, so it's hard to say, but
Gotcha.
I can't get it all. I know why a lot of pyramids were built. The one
Yeah.
in Las Vegas, I know why it was built.
Yeah.
And there's one in over there, Atlanta. I think it's a pro bass shop now.
Yeah.
Um,
And
or
the Louvre
Memphis,
is a big
maybe it
pyramid.
is. I
Yep.
haven't been there.
Yeah. So okay. Let's get into this a little bit. You're saying that talk to us a bit about the research of this that leads you to believe that this was a pump. What is it about the physical features and what is it about the
Hmm.
structure of it that
Hmm.
makes you think that it was?
Well, I got interested in the structure of the Great Pyramid. My background is very technical, so I wanted to know about the Great Pyramid. That's fair enough.
Right.
So went down to the library. This is before the internet, pretty much, and checked out books by Egyptologists, and they talk about the big ramp and everything, and the workers had really strong backs, and they drug 70-ton payloads. That's the weight of a railroad locomotive up happily up this ramp over and over. So they tell that story, and I thought, oh, okay, well, that's what they say. Now all I need to do is see their demonstrations. But guess what? Here's something that most people don't tell you. Egyptology doesn't engage in the scientific method. There is no demonstration of them moving the heaviest stones 1 inch ever. So
So all of that's just
and they
theory for the little the B footage on TV because you always see when they have the rollers and then they have all the people pushing or pulling all this stuff,
oh
going
yeah,
up the pyramid. But you're
yeah.
saying none of that has been scientifically proven out or tested.
Well, they have a demonstration. They say, well, some of the stones of the Great Pyramid were 70 tons. We're going to show you how stones were moved. So they move a 1.5 ton stone.
Huh. That's not
I
something
can
to.
lift a full size Chevy pickup up over my head, and I'll prove that with a demonstration. I'll lift a Hot Wheels car up over my head. You see?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an
Yeah.
issue of scale
Definitely not to
regarding the
scale on that.
validity of their demonstrations.
Okay.
So it's pretty false.
So you were
I can also say, well, cows jump over the moon, and I'm a cow jump over the moonologist. But the first thing you would say was, show me a demonstration. Well, as many cows have jumped over the moon as Egyptologists have moved a full size, largest stones. And they also say the casing stones, the precision cut stones that covered the Great Pyramid, were created using hand tools, Doriite pounders and bronze chisels, Okay,
Yeah.
that's a great story. That's a hypothesis. But guess what? Egyptologists have never made a single casing stone in the manner they say it was done. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting. So that leads to two questions. The first question would be what you addressed first. How did they build? What is your model of how they built the
First
pyramid?
thing I learned is how they didn't do it. And you
Okay.
go to the library with all those fancy, slick, well-produced books, and they have that great big error about an impossible method to move the stones up the big ramp that would have had to been bigger than the Great Pyramid itself. But we think the stones were moved with ease, that it was the easiest part of creating the Great Pyramid. They used water locks like those at the Erie Canal or even the Panama Canal, water locks.
Yeah.
And they supplied water to the construction site and built a series of water locks from the Nile River all the way up to the construction site. Then the first stones that were set in place, this is a very abbreviated explanation,
Oh, of
were the
course.
casing stones for the first level. So they had a square wall, and those casing stones are bonded together watertight with a very strong bonding agent. So they use the water to fill that square pond up, that square enclosure of casing stones, and the water that they supplied to the building site, they were able to fill all the water locks to the Nile River. So many of the quarries are across the river. So everyone acknowledges that they used barges at least part of the time. But in this explanation, they used barges and moved the stones all the way up to the building site and then into that pond and fill that pond up with interior stones. And then the first level of the Great Pyramid is completed. Then they put the casing stones on for the next layer of the Great Pyramid and added an additional water lock to the flight of water locks that would go to that second layer, added additional water into that second pond, and then moved the stones up systematically, production line efficiency, all the way up, fill that pond up with interior stones and completed the second level. The Great Pyramid was built level by level from the bottom up, of course. Casing stones first, then the interior stones. So it was a systematic process that was the easiest part
Yeah.
of building the Great Pyramid. The Erie Canal was built in the 1830s. It was built to hold barges that held 70-ton payloads, which is the same weight as the largest stones of the Great Pyramid. The Erie Canal was originally 4.5 feet deep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that also, if if they could pump that much water in from the Nile to build this massive pyramid to be a pump, why would they need to build such a large structure to be a pump if they could have access to the Nile River?
Well, they have access to the Nile River, it's right there.
Yeah.
But we think that they supplied water from the ancient Lake Maurice, which is still there, not directly from the Nile. And they pumped the water from the subterranean chamber and other passages in the right below the Great Pyramid. So they built those passages first, which originally acted like a water pump. And that water supplied the water for the pond I was talking about and the water locks. So I call that the construction pump. And so that's how it pumped water, if you will.
Okay. Now, where was the pump? The pyramid. Where was the pumping water to?
It pumped water to the well. First of all, it pumped water to build the Great Pyramid itself. And the upper part of the Great Pyramid, all the King's, Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery are a different type of water pump. Those two water pumps were connected in series, and it allowed the output to be of a higher elevation and greater volume. So it's kind of like two locomotives. You often see many engines in series. A lot of things
Yeah.
are connected in series. A automotive gasoline engine is like eight small engines connected in series with some components that are common to all of them, like the crankshaft. So they had in effect, two water pumps connected in the series. But they pumped the output of the water pump, the Great Pyramid water pump, was the upper ends of the King's Chamber vents. We think that there was a passage on both sides of the Great Pyramid that it was incorporated inside the casing stones that were gone, and then that water went down that passage and then to the point of use. So that's how the water exited the Great Pyramid water pump.
So it sounds almost like this was like a water tower. Is
Kind
that
of.
okay? So it
Kind
pumped
of a
water in
tower,
from
yeah,
those.
if you will, but it
Okay.
provided a great height or head, if you will, to the point of use. There's a number of very large excavations just within feet of the Great Pyramid that are a mystery to a lot of people, and we think that that housed machinery that the Great Pyramid water pump powered, either to make compressed air or to power other types of machinery and that type of thing. So I see the Giza Plateau as originally like a industrial park or a science center
Oh,
instead of just a area for tombs.
interesting. So what about the guts of the pyramid led you to this conclusion as well? Like the
What about the
inside
what
work.
now?
What about the guts? The inside of the
Yeah,
pyramid led you to
yeah,
this
the inside of the
conclusion.
Great Pyramid. Yeah, there's certainly a profound link between water and the Great Pyramid. Flanders Petrie found what he called Nile earth, which is sediment inside the Great Pyramid. Many of the chambers have stones that are bonded together with a very unusual bonding agent that is watertight. And casing stones are watertight. Herodotus described the Great Pyramid as being like an island surrounded by water. There was an enclosure wall around the Great Pyramid that existed up until the 1800s when Napoleon conquered Egypt. And some of the savants drew that enclosure wall. Well, we think that was filled with water for a number of purposes, and that would be like the Great Pyramid would be like a big island in a lake that wasn't very much bigger than the island, if you will. So there's a lot of evidence that can be interpreted to indicate water was a very important part of the construction and purpose of the Great Pyramid.
Gotcha. Now, so we're talking to Stephen Myers. He is from the Pharaoh's Pump and the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation. Thepump.org is the website that he is that you can go to get more information about this. And I'm actually trying to pull up a picture here as well from Kunkel's book. But you have a book there you want to talk about. Go right ahead
This
and
is my first book, if you will, Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid. It is primarily how the Great Pyramid was assembled, a lot of illustrations, that type of thing. It's also available in Kindle ebook format. So it describes how the Great Pyramid was assembled. And then my other second book so far is The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine. Talks about the return on investment for such a huge construction project and why the Great Pyramid was built. So oftentimes societies build big projects and expect those big projects to have a huge return on investment. Let's say the Hoover Dam. It has passages and chambers in it, but and some of those passages point to stars, but the that is immaterial. The purpose of the Hoover Dam, a big structure, is to provide prosperity for the people that built it. And we think the Great Pyramid was built to have a huge return on investment.
So you're saying that there was evidence of machinery that was there. When you say machinery, it's in our modern day mind we think of car motors or big turbines and motors, etc. What is it that you describe as machinery there
Well,
that was
well,
used
yeah,
or seen?
yeah, well, that we think that the Great Pyramid and ancient Egypt is like a puzzle with many of the pieces gone. So there is a lot of precision stone cutting, but the machines that done that precision stone cutting is gone. But I was just saying that large excavation and some other features could have housed the machinery that this water power would have powered. But there's a lot of different types of machines. A lever is considered a machine,
Right.
a trompe, which is a machine that doesn't really have any moving parts, but it uses water to move down through this machine to compress air. It's a hydraulic air compressor without any like shafts or propellers or motors or
Yeah.
anything. And they were quite popular up until we developed alternating current, really. But we think that the passages and chambers of the Great Pyramid, which don't look like a tomb, were part of the Great Pyramid machine that
Right.
functioned to pump water. In my books and also my documentaries, I have two documentaries that are free to watch on our website, describe all of this stuff in great detail, so that will help in the inquisitive mind to find out more about the direction of our research if they watch those documentaries.
Gotcha. Now, in your book there that you just had, the prosperity, what are some of the examples that you have for the return on investment there for Egypt and um, the prosperity that they would have envisioned or experienced?
Oh, that's easy. They would have transferred toil into leisure. They would have transferred the desert into a garden with water.
Okay.
They would have powered machinery to pursue scientific inquiry and scientific experiments. With compressed air, you can use a what they call like a vortex, that one end has very hot temperature and the other has very cold temperature. So with compressed air, you can do refrigeration or even cold enough temperature to temper metals and other things. So compressed air, you can make high voltage static electricity. So there's a lot of things they could have done, but in the Valley of the Nile, the largest structure ever built in the Valley of the Nile is pumping water right now. So it was built at a huge expense. And I was just there a couple of months ago pumping water and providing, you know, enormous prosperity and return on investment. And that water pump is the High Aswan Dam. The electricity doesn't just sit there, it's used to irrigate year round
Right.
and a number of other things. The largest water pump proper in the whole world is in the Valley of the Nile. People
Hold that
can
thought
learn.
for me right there, if you don't mind. We're going to hit a break real quick, and we're going to
Okay.
continue with Stephen Myers on the other side. You're listening to the Paranormal Files right here on Odyssey Radio. We will see you on the other side. Welcome back to the breakdown, folks. Thanks so very much for staying with us during that break. This is the Paranormal Files. We are talking to Stephen Myers from the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation, how and why the Great Pyramid was built. You can go over to thepump.org for additional information as well. Before we went to the break, Stephen was giving us some information on the largest water pump. You said the largest water pump in the world is still in operation over in Egypt. Is that correct?
Yes, just recently built. The It's called the Mubarak pumping station. People can look that up. It's massive. Again, the largest water pumping facility in the world. So the point I'm trying to make is in modern Egypt, there is a need for a massive water pump, even though the Nile flooded every year. Well, that was insufficient for the purposes that they needed water for. So they built the High Aswan Dam, which ended the yearly inundation, but they can now irrigate year round. And the Mubarak pumping station is used for irrigation. So it's an important thing. In modern times, the Valley of the Nile needs huge water pumping facility, and in ancient times, the Valley of the Nile needed a huge water pumping facility, and both of those things were built with a huge return on investment in mind. So that's
Yeah.
that's a good start
Yeah.
on our direction of research.
Gotcha. So now there are a lot of theories, and I see that you're quite passionate about debunking some of those theories. But there are quite a few theories, everything ranging from what you're talking about here, the water pump, all the way to aliens came down and built these pyramids. To the if you could see Steven's face right now as I said that, I don't know if he was rolling his eyes at that one or not, but there are myriad pyramid theories of their construction. One of the ones that I see that you talk about a lot is something called the Orion correlation theory. What is the Orion correlation theory? And you debunk that. You don't hold to this, but what is the Orion correlation theory?
Well, it's a theory that is fairly prominent right now. It's the second, if I can say this, correlation theory that has focused on the Great Pyramid. The first correlation theory is the correlations between the Great Pyramid and the Holy Bible. People have come up with correlations about the birthplace of Jesus, and the Great Pyramid confirms Bible prophecy and predicts the timing of World War One and a whole bunch of other things. That's called biblical pyramidology, is that correlation theory. But that theory's been debunked, or is certainly not very popular anymore, because people have examined the methods those correlations were come up with, how they came up with them. And it was determined that those correlations, even though they're precise, were flawed because they were based on poor research methods and logical fallacies. Well, lo and behold, who would have thunk it? Another Great Pyramid correlation arose and talks about correlations between the Great Pyramid and stars and all of that thing. So, my issue is with the research methods used by that Orion correlation theory, and most of them are rather flawed. So, both of those correlation theories are very similar because have a foundation of very flawed research methods. So I think that the Orion correlation theory will meet the same fate as the biblical correlation theory and be rejected. There's a third correlation theory I want to mention,
Yeah.
and that is phrenology, which was the study of the bumps on people's heads
Oh
and
yeah.
how that relates to character traits and that type of thing. We've all seen the usually ceramic head with little areas,
Right.
for fear or happiness and that type of thing. I don't know if you're familiar with
Right.
phrenology at all,
Yeah.
taught in universities and everything, but it could not withstand the rigors of the scientific method. The correlations had no causation, and it went away. They don't teach it anymore in universities, and the biblical correlation theory is already done. Just a few fanatics are believe in that, and the Orion correlation theory is in crisis now, and will meet the same fate. It takes probably about a generation for the people to die off that believe any of those correlation theories, but that's the fate that's going to meet the Orion correlation theory, is ending up in the ash heap of rejected ideas.
Interesting. So yeah, now the biblical pyramidology would be interesting to delve into that and to hear your theories. But I know that I'm not sure if that's something you're prepared to do right now. Uh,
Oh, no, it's just that they've come up with a pyramid inch. They just pulled it out of the hat. They measured what they call the boss on a stone in the antechamber, and
yeah,
that pyramid inch equals 1 year. Why? Because they just made it up. So then they measure the passages and chambers and other features, and then they can predict the date and of all of these events. But a lot of it is self-fulfilling prophecy and that type of thing. They can fudge the numbers for things that happened in the past, but if they try to predict things in the future, they don't do as well. So it's just a conglomeration of logical fallacies, and it's rejected because of that. And the same thing with the Orion correlation theory has that same type of really low standards of evidence, you know, extremely poor research methods. But it is popular, and but popularity doesn't validate a theory. That's called the appeal to popularity, and it's a logical fallacy. So but there's a lot of different logical fallacies, and I'm not the only one that rejects the Orion correlation theory based on its research methods. There's a book called The Stargate Conspiracy that has a really neat quote that I will quote right now. It says, however, and the Orion correlation theory was came up with by Robert Bouval. Anyway, he's still alive. But this book, The Stargate Conspiracy, says, however, some of Bouval's assumptions are open to question. For example, he presents a very circular argument that uses the stellar alignments of the shafts to prove the date of the Great Pyramid, but also relies on the date to prove that the shafts have stellar alignments. This is classic circular reasoning. So that's just one specific type of logical fallacy that is foundational to the Orion correlation theory.
I think isn't it Graham Hancock that wrote that book?
Not the Stargate conspiracy. No, that was a different two. I
I've
believe two authors.
yeah, I've actually got that book on my bookshelf. Well, technically, it's in the
Page 36.
uh, yeah. That's I've it's well, technically it's in a box right now because I'm moving, but still, I yeah that's a fascinating book. So basically, the Orion correlation theory is that the alignment or the arrangement of the pyramids are somehow in correlation with the constellation Orion. Is that correct? Um, and
Well,
just
that's what they assert.
which
They say, well, these three random pyramids that we're going to happen to group together because we want to look like three random stars that we want to group together because they look like each other. So two things that look like each other are related because they look like each other. So
no,
I don't know, what anyone else thinks, but that is a very poor research method. I've made a few memes on Facebook
yeah.
and about different things, a garbage can that looks like R2D2 or a cloud that looks like a puppy dog. You know, dogs didn't evolve to look like that cloud, and the cloud didn't form itself to look like that dog. So even though the two things look like each other, if you squint, then there's no real relationship. So they just they just came up with that, and and they ran with it, if you will. But here's a question: what feature specific to the Great Pyramid indicates the Great Pyramid has any relationship with Orion?
I wouldn't know. I mean, would it be just the alignment of them? I guess I'm not sure.
Well, here's a data point. The vents at one time pointed to some stars. Okay,
Okay.
but because of the precession of the equinoxes, those vents don't point to those stars at all. Every 72 years, the sky moves 1 degree. So they're what, 70 degrees off? That's pretty off, if you will, not pointing to those stars at all. So with that information, you can make this interpretation. The original builders wanted to tell us in the future, that the Great Pyramid has nothing to do with Orion, because they symbolically told us this in this manner by having the vents point away from those stars. Okay.
Okay. So that's just a rescuing
What I'm saying is, you can make up anything you want.
right.
Anything you want, you can make up if you don't have causation for the correlations. What you need is some sort of a third piece of evidence that ties the other two pieces of evidence together.
Hmm.
But they don't have
They don't
causation
have
in the
causation.
Orion correlation theory. You know,
Yeah.
Robert Bauval wrote a whole book about correlations, doesn't talk about causation.
Interesting.
It is interesting. They use this, no causation, but if you encounter a person who believes the Orion correlation theory, they don't even know what causation is or why it's important. And another thing that they do, the Orion correlation theory, is they fiddle around with the numbers, and if they can get the numbers to match up, then it numerically validates a correlation. But that's a flaw. Numbers do not validate a correlation at all. Do you believe me?
You're making a very compelling case. Yeah. I think what it comes down to on all. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The band, the Beatles,
Yeah.
they have 4 members. Well, the Great Pyramid has 4 sides. Shazam! It's a mathematically precise correlation.
Yeah.
The two are related. Well, people can say, yeah, but no. Hey, you can keep going with that. You can run with it. Each side of the Great Pyramid actually has a crease from the apex down to the center of the base, kind of a bends in. Well, each Beatle is a musician and a singer.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Shazam!
You've got the
It's
Beatle
a
correlation
correlation.
theory.
It's the biblical Beatle correlation theory.
Yeah.
But then people say, "Oh no, it can't be right because there was a fifth Beatle."
Oh.
You've heard about
Oh
that,
yeah.
the fifth Beatle,
Yeah.
way back when.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not into the Beatles,
Yeah.
but guess what? The Great Pyramid has a bottom. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
I mean,
There's your other.
I'm writing a magazine article about the precise correlations between the Great Pyramid and Elvis Presley.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you just data. See, there's a lot of data points
Right.
about Elvis Presley. His music, the number of movies he's been in, his age, and the amount of drugs he took, and all of that. And the Great Pyramid has a lot of data points. The numbers, the size, and all of the. So you just cherry pick 2 data points that might match up mathematically, and then just say it's a correlation. Well, that's flawed.
Right.
You can't do it. And then another thing, the Orion correlation says, well, if something points to something, that makes it valid. Well, the vents of the Great Pyramid are pointing to different stars now. So if pointing to a star means it was intended to point to stars, those vents have actually pointed to thousands of different stars through the eons, and will point to others in the future. So what makes one thing special and the other thing not? It's very convoluted, very a mishmash of poor research methods. And I try, sometimes on Facebook to try to get people to talk about research methods, but they know that's the Achilles heel of the Orion correlation theory. And those people that believe it will not talk about research methods at all. So it's very telling, if I could put it that way. And so
Yeah, well, I mean, without the scientific method, that's the reason why it's so important to have those testing, observable, testable, repeatable, like you were saying, causation and correlation, et cetera. You can't just make up anything or cherry pick, as you mentioned, data points, collectively throw them together and make it say whatever you want to. It's not a wax nose.
Well, yeah.
It's just
Well, hallelujah, brother. I believe what you're saying, but that's not the way it is in the real world, And if the Orion correlation theory called itself the Orion correlation religion, then oh yeah, that's okay. Because I don't put down anybody's religion. I'm not into that. But they are passing off a cult that that is passed off as a theory, but they only stop at hypothesis and not prove their theory, other than to just say the precision validates a correlation or the numbers validate a correlation, but they don't say the causation validates a correlation. There's no feature specific to the Great Pyramid which indicates it was even intended to be symbolic, at
so.
all. It's this big pile of
So
rocks.
what's the
There's
reason that
no
they're doing this?
indicator. There's no feature specific to the Great Pyramid to indicate the Great Pyramid had anything to do with the Book of the Dead or the pyramid texts or a funeral. So, people just apply that onto the Great Pyramid, but not in a really scientific manner. So it's a strange world. The Great Pyramid, for some reason, attracts that type of shoddy research that is it's embarrassing for me to to have to tell people. And I know a lot of researchers who will become triggered when asked about research methods. It just seems odd to me. I'm actually, maybe I have different training than they have, but
Well, what's the
and
reason
then
why?
drawing lines. Oh my golly.
What's that?
If you look on the internet, all these people draw all these lines on the internet and everything. Well, I asked people, are those lines, were they intended by the original builders? Oh boy, you don't want to ask that question. They just like those lines,
Yeah.
and that people draw so many lines on these pyramid images, they almost color the whole thing in. So it's just a red flag,
Yeah.
not being able to talk about research methods, concerning
Well,
research. So
whenever you're not allowed to question some theory or something that's been posited by researchers or scientists, then you start to realize exactly what their sacred cows are. It doesn't matter if there is research that proves it out or if it's whatever their theory is. They just have an agenda at that point. And unfortunately, you see
I agree with you, and certainly questioning the Orion correlation theory has been,
I bet it's been a huge
I
turnoff.
made some enemies. Whatever that's worth, I did make some enemies.
Well, what's
So
the reason though? Why are they
what
pushing this theory now as being the big theory? Why is it so popular?
it is popular, and they about the Orion and all of that, but it's also a very small return on investment. You and I, here in the United States, we could build a pyramid. We can stack rocks on top of each other, and the purpose of that would be to symbolically tell people in the future that we knew pi. We can do that,
Yeah.
but the reason why we don't do that is because the return on investment would be really small, and it would be stupid to do. But the original builders, I think, were geniuses, and they didn't build that huge infrastructure, which only produced a small return on investment. They had a big return on investment, and it was the Great Pyramid was not built at a huge cost, but it was a wise investment.
So again, why are they pushing this specific agenda? Why is this the popular one of the
Well,
day?
Somebody made it up and other people like it. 100 years ago, the biblical correlation theory was all the rage, and the Great Pyramid confirmed Bible prophecy, confirmed where Jesus was born because of the alignment was precise. Precision alignments don't validate a correlation. It's
Yeah.
but they are, and then the ancient alien people. I have issues with them as well. If you think the Great Pyramid was built by aliens, you are also saying ancient people weren't smart enough to build the Great Pyramid. So, but the people that believe ancient alien ideas don't like the flip side of that coin. They don't want to say that the original people in the Valley of the Nile were too stupid to stack stones into a big pile. So it's also kind of ethnocentric to say that aliens had to come down and do it. It is kind of derogatory and insulting to ancient people. I think that there were some geniuses in the Valley of the Nile, maybe like a Nikola Tesla type of a guy or a Victor Schauberger or others. And they made their huge infrastructure, to help their civilizations, not aliens coming down they could find the earth, but they need to make a big beacon to find their way back or to phone home. It's not very satisfying to me, the ancient alien idea. But what is satisfying is in the Valley of the Nile in ancient times, there were geniuses who wanted to help the civilization that they built in. So they created this huge structure as a wise investment, which pumped water and provide huge prosperity for themselves and for their children. That's what I think happened.
Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Tell us where we can get more information about this.
Most everything about me you can find out from our website at thepump.org. You can email me from that website, or links to my YouTube channel with my two documentaries and other videos about various things. You can also that's a nice graphic you put up there. Also, read my books. A lot of researchers nowadays are non-book reading researchers.
I don't see how that's possible.
Read a book.
Yeah.
That's what the revolution is going to look like. It's my first book, but and then find out about the research. Don't just come up with something in your mind that debunks my research, but that's not even part of my research. It's just something you made up. So
Right.
I've had a lot of people do that, lazy researchers. But read a book, or look at our documentary. Send me an email. And if you think after you find out about our research, if you think it has merit, mention it on social media, or put a link on your page to our page, or get involved. Wouldn't that be interesting? So
Absolutely.
Pray for us. We are a nonprofit, so any type of donation, materials, that type of thing. We recently got a 3D printer, so that helps. And we have a facility here in southwestern Oregon that we are equipping with tooling and some other things. We're doing some experimentation in various scales,
Yeah,
and various components, but there's certainly the funding intensive project that we're doing is to redevelop this ancient high technology for our modern but troubled world.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Stephen Myers from thepump.org. Thank you for joining us on the show tonight. And folks, until next time, make Christ supremely valuable.